Hello, welcome to episode 7. This is the last episode for our series. We will talk about in this episode the power of attitude. So, this weekend I watched a lecture from John Maxwell. He's the founder of John Maxwell Company and the Equip International Leadership Training Organization. He's a renowned international motivational speaker and an author. He sold over 21 million books. Question is, what is attitude? According to the dictionary, an attitude is a feeling or emotion toward a fact or a state. And that feeling or that emotion is usually generated through our thinking. So if you are a positive thinker, you generate a positive feeling or a positive attitude. If you're a negative thinker, you're going to generate a negative attitude. Attitude affects the way we behave. It affects our behavior. So if you have a positive attitude, you will have a positive behavior, which will ultimately produce a positive results. Same thing, if you have a negative attitude, you will have a negative behavior, and ultimately you may produce a negative results. The key points I have learned from his lecture at the three main things, and all three of them are based on how do you identify if a leader has a good attitude or not. So a leader with a good attitude, the first thing you will know is that the leader with a good attitude is coachable. He or she is constantly setting new goals for herself, to find a new training, to find a mentor, to develop herself to go and to get new skills. In other words, a leader with a positive attitude uh, evaluates him or herself before they evaluate his followers. If there is a problem and the work wasn't completed in his department, before he judges his employees, he sits back and thinks, like, he asks himself questions like, was I clear enough? Was my expectation clear to my employees? So somebody who is coachable and that have a teachable spirit, we can say that that's a leader with a positive attitude. The second thing for a leader with a positive attitude is they take responsibility. If there is a problem, they take the bigger blame. If there is a credit to be given to someone because a good thing happened, they take less of the credit. They always pass the credit to their followers, or their employees. Glasso said one time, a good leader takes a little more than his share of the blame and a little less of his share of the credit. So they take responsibility. The third thing I have learned from his lecture, which is so important, is that they understand the value of attitude, the value that an attitude can add to you, to the job that you do, or to the things that you do in your life. Because attitude is an expression of your values and beliefs and expectations, right? Um, so that attitude is needed at the beginning of the work. When you are approaching a new work, if you're starting a new thing, new task, the attitude that you come up with, you're faced with that task, will most likely dictate the results that you will get at the end of the day. If you have a positive attitude that you want to get this job done in a positive way, you will most likely get the positive results that you're expecting. If you approach with a negative attitude, thinking that you're not going to be able to accomplish this, most likely you will get negative results. This actually reminds me a book that I read from Schiff Hera, who is he's a best-selling author, and his book's called You Can Win. He sold over 10 million copies for that book. He talks about the value of an attitude. And if you change your attitude, how that will affect the results. He talks about a biblical story between David and Goliath. Goliath was a giant man that everybody from the village is curious about him. And David was a 17-year-old kid So he came to visit his brothers in the village, and they told him this story that there is this guy Goliath, and he's a big guy, and everybody's scared about him. So David talks to his brothers, saying that, why don't you stand up and fight with him? They told him that he's too big. David had a different attitude, and he was like, he's too big. He's not. We can fight with him. And the rest is his story. We know that David killed the Goliath, and the rest is the story, is the history. So the attitude is all about the way you approach things. Will that attitude that you have it will most likely reflect your behaviors, and also it will produce the results that you're looking for. The first takeaway from this lecture is that attitude improves your career. One research shows that attitude is considered the most important determinant for career success in contemporary career era. So it improves your career. There is another research that from a Schiffera, that book, he talks about a research conducted by Harvard University about the attitude. The people who get promoted in their job and have a fulfilling career, 85 of them, they get promoted because of their attitude. Only 15% get promoted because of their intelligence and their knowledge. On the other side, second takeaway I have from this lecture is that negative attitude can destroy your career. I have read a research, a lawsuit filed by a former school principal against a district in Indiana. So the district court ruled against the principal on the basis of cases that they found about her attitude and leadership while she was the principal of the school. So if you have a bad attitude, if you have a negative attitude, and that will affect your leadership skills, and it will affect your behavior and the way you behave, the way you treat with the people, and that can destroy your career. The third takeaway is that having a positive attitude, the people who have a good positive attitude, they have a good working environment. They have a fun working environment, and they have a productive working environment. On the other side, people with bad attitude could have a stressful working environment. So how do we nurture positive attitude? Because positive attitude looks like it's everything, right? How do you nurture that? The one thing that you would do is that you need to change your thinking. Willie Wilson said, when you replace your negative thoughts with positive ones, you will start having positive results. So change your thinking. The way you think, the more you think positive, the more you can generate that positive attitude, and you will have a positive behavior, which will ultimately produce positive results. How does this apply to me and as a young leader? The first thing, there is three things that this applies to me. Number one, I have to think positive all the time. Think positive, because that will generate that positive feeling and a positive attitude. Communicate positive. Don't always talk about problems, talk about solutions, and talk about the positive things, because the art of communication is the language of leadership. And give gratitude. Acknowledge other people, the people who are important, your coworkers and the people who work for you. Acknowledge them, because gratitude brings peace for the day. When you acknowledge someone what they did, that brings peace for that day, and it also creates vision for tomorrow as well. Body-mind connection. When I was listening to this episode, I was doing some exercise, and one of the things that I'm trying to dig deeper in is that to find a research that talks about the body-mind connection. So there's a lot of research, but I need to dig a little bit more deeper in this area. What I found out is that I was more focused, and I was more relaxed, and I was more empowered when I was listening to, more energetic. I found one research that links the movement of the body with the enhancement of your learning. Another research shows that physical exercise improves the learning outcomes. And the way it happens is that the more you move your muscles and your body, um, your blood circulation goes up, and the blood goes into your brain, and your brain gets more oxygen and more blood cells. That improves your focus and improves your understanding. There was one research that I found conducted by a company called Here to Help, and that's a Canadian company. And I found this is very important, and I think it's related to the attitude. They're talking about if the body-mind connection, um, if people think negative, when they are stressed, if you are stressed and you're thinking negative, that thinking affects the way you behave. So they have some recommendations to change that negative thinking when you are in stress or you have something else going on in your life. They said you ask yourself, what is stressing you out? So when you find out what the problem is, then ask the second question, which is, what do I have in my possession? So what are the resources and the strengths that I have in my possession so I can deal with this situation? When you find your strength and your resources, then ask the third question, which is, how do I solve this problem, or how do I cope with this situation? And I found this is really fascinating, and I think it's related to the attitude. Whenever you are stressed out, you're thinking your negative thinking in your head, that will affect your behavior, and that will affect the way you produce results. So shifting that one will help you to produce a positive feeling and a positive attitude, and have a positive behavior, and ultimately produce a positive results. Thank you so much. This is the end of this video, and see you next time. Bye.